So welcome to the Poetics of Enlightenment, whatever that might mean. And I want to thank Diane and Shepard for gracing us, my term, with their presence. And a few words, I hope just a few. I've had the privilege of knowing Diane and Shepard for, I don't know, 20 years? Easily. And we had the great romance of working on Tibetan texts with them. And I learned a great thing from Diane, more than one, that sometimes in translating a word, maybe you have 3 or 4 possible translations. And you taught me that it was okay, and that I think from time to time it was your practice to put, like a stack, all of those possible words, and that was a game changer for me.
Yeah, I'm glad. I translated the long Invitation to the Voyage by Gould that way, and it has these little arrows, and then this choice. You know, I think your mind or your eyes go to the choice that's right for that moment, just like in a jazz piece.
Is this in print?
No, but I have a gazillion manuscripts I haven't published.
Only a gazillion? Okay.
Easily as many as I've published.
And this by
Shepard and I are working on by making stacks of them on our dresser and things.
Scan everything. Yeah. And before that, of course, Diane's had a very fecund and productive career. Poet, essayist, painter, playwright, teacher, dancer, bon vivant, photographer, printer, yes. Yeah, and we've been in dialogue about the possibility of her coming, and so we will see how it goes. I asked Diane if she would consent to reading some of her poetry, and perhaps, if so moved, responding to what arises when she hears herself reading some of her poetry. And then we'll be a bit back and forth, and we'll fold this in with those here. We'll see how long we go. Everything depends on energy, goodwill, and as she put it when we were just sitting down, something like, I'm twisting it a bit, as long as there's interesting questions. No, I know, I'm teasing.
Well, maybe as long as I have interesting answers.
There you go. She might give the answers, and we can imagine what the questions would be. Okay, anyway, please help me in giving a warm welcome to Diane.
Thank you, everybody. I think that I should start by saying that I have an autoimmune disease that makes me dry, very, very dry. It's called Sjogren's syndrome, and it's very boring, so I won't tell you more about it. But I'm going to constantly need to drink that stuff, and that's what makes me pronounce everything so funny. So if you don't understand something I'm saying, sometimes I just can't say a word, a given word, but if you don't understand something I'm saying, say what, and I'll say it again. Okay? I mean, the point was to be here and be shy about all that, so I'm not. What I thought about when Stephen asked me to come and do this was, I thought I'd like to talk about how I get the poem, or how does the poem happen? How does the poem be? I have no idea really, but I know that mostly it's not something that I make happen. Let me say that during different parts of my life, there have been times when I made the poem happen. And they were for specific reasons. Like I have a whole book of such poems called Revolutionary Letters. Revolutionary Letters, I started writing them in 1968. And it's a kind of, I have several things going that tend to be cereal, or not to eat, but the other kind of cereal. And they happen over the years, and over and over. So each edition of Revolutionary Letters has more and different, more letters added to the old ones, but I don't bother to go back and explain who who was Kerr at Columbia University when we did sit-ins there. I leave those names and things. People can look it up or not. There's this thing called the internet, which gets way too much into our lives anyway. You might as well use it for that. So when I write revolutionary letters, often it's something that I think about for a while. Oh, I want to write about that. But then I don't. So that in that way, I've sort of set an intention. But then I don't say, okay, today I'm going to sit down and write this revolutionary letter. Once I decide I'm thinking about that, I stop thinking about it, and then all of a sudden, one time or another, I hear the music of it. Either I hear the rhythm or I hear a few words. And so sometimes when that happens, and if I'm near a pen and some notebook or paper, then that piece will happen whole. If I'm not near anything but a napkin, I write those few words down and hope that they'll get me started later. But most of the work doesn't happen that way. Most of the work happens completely off the wall. You're sound asleep. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten to hurt more and more in more and more places. I have arthritis and this and that. So I'm lucky because all those things wake me up. And I often wake up in the middle of a dream or in the middle of a line from something I need to write. And that happens a lot too. So, and then a lot of other things happen. I'm on the 5th copy of Anne Carson's Not Winter, which is all the fragments of Sappho they found so far, which tend to be a lot. By now it's almost 200. And I use these because, as Robert Duncan said about a different book, he had a copy of Rumi that he wrote his piece, his Sufi piece in, and he said it had lots of Rumi pages. But, you know, I've often done that in other books. I write my dreams in Joseph Cornell's dream books. I don't think I brought one I meant to. But anyway, so when I started using one of these books that way, I meant to do one book, and I meant to kind of do versions of Sappho. And versions off this translation, other translations, I read Greek a little bit, and I have the dictionary, all that stuff. So I thought I'd be writing some versions of Sappho. And I thought, that's a nice little project. I'll do it when I don't have something that I want to, or something isn't coming through. But then what happened was the damn thing took over in a way where it's like about 1.5 years now. And it wakes me up. I'm up half the night sometimes. And it's not only Sappho. It started off Sappho. Then Aphrodite started, I was going to say, yammering at me, talking to me. And then other things happened. And an early one of those would have been just Sappho talking. One that I remember right now, which is not, this is volume 4. So anyway, it was just love has taken the sword out of my hand. And there were a lot of those, and they were incomprehensible. And then keeps getting different and keeps getting, okay, there came the point where it's become a big thing, I don't know. It became a big question for me where, if you take a look at a map, Lesbos is near Turkey. What and when did the Greeks colonize there, or why was she writing in Greek, or was she writing in Greek? I've asked her 12 times, she wouldn't answer me, but. Here's a Sappho poem, a recent, she's speaking in this one. Heart of mine, be silent. Don't answer this two-faced beauty. Whatever you say will be twisted once again. And then there was early one was nobody like her, bridegroom, and I should know. And so this is one way, this is a way of receiving when you start with an invitation, and then whatever you've been invited comes in and won't leave, That doesn't happen much. I've been writing this book called Lola for since 71, and She-Wolf, it's 2 volumes of it are out with, book 1 and book 2 is out with Penguin, but not all of book 2 because they wanted only a certain number of pages, and that's a whole other problem. And then almost all of book 3 is written, but I haven't even looked for a publisher. But Lola doesn't move in to stay. Lola, if you catch a glimpse of her at the corner of your eye, I mean, for a month or 2, she might be planning to come in and give you 1 poem or a deluge of poems. Now, I'm talking too much. Maybe I did. No? Okay. So she, you never know with her, with that. One amazing thing in recent years with Lola, because it always changes, there's always amazing things, but relatively recent. About a month before Katrina, I started writing a whole bunch of Lola poems that foreshadowed that. I had no idea that's what I was, of course, that was coming, but July 26th, I started writing these poems. Lola Desesperada, and it's Desesperada, and it's a, it was going to be published, and then the guy had twins, so it's hard things, so he stopped doing the little nice books, and the proofs are sitting somewhere in those stacks of books that aren't out. But it ended during the storm, and I didn't even realize that those were connected, because we don't watch the news much or anything, And then, about a week after the storm, it just so happened that my friend, another poet from the East Coast, who reads with me when she comes out at Bird and Beckett bookstore, because it's just one of the things we do. And so it was the first place I had a chance to read that Desesperada, and I read it there. And I came home that night, and after readings, it's hard to go to sleep, so I was up for a while, and then and that night, I had gone to the reading without a notebook, so I bought a notebook from the guy in the bookstore. I have this notebook and nothing in it except some notes from some of Maria's poems. I'm going to sleep with my notebook, because I always go to sleep with my notebook and pen, and Shep says it's hard to get my pen out of my hand. He says I'm like a bird, I'm hanging onto a perch. But anyway, I was barely asleep when I woke up, and I heard the beginning of this thing. And I would fall back asleep, and between almost every, I would fall back asleep, and then something would wake me up again, and I'd start writing. I woke up because I was cold and hungry. I ate crackers. The moon had fallen down. Fall asleep, wake up. 2 later. I'm going to skip, I'm not going to do all of them. Blades rising. Saracen crescent. Western moon. Fall asleep. This is where I have come to discern the underpinning of mountains. Bones in a circle, like lace beneath shale. Prophecy's garden. This crushed intention. Circle of smoke, cry of the white moon. This is where I have come. This is where I have come to discern. Mandrake walking, yellow auras, fly-blown, floated granite with mica heart. I had no idea what I was writing. That's the other thing, you have to trust it. Because you can't. Obvious, this one is. Obvious. On the day you cannot hide, don't try. Stand naked in the fire, in the water, in the wind. On the day you can no longer hide, smile. Though it might be rictus takes your eye. On the back and forward day, don't try to hide your face in your hands of bone, just bone. I will not go to sleep. My God. Wonder what the hell is going on. I will not let thee go except thou bless me. I would hear these, I just heard them. I mostly didn't see, some I saw. I will not let thee go except thou bless me. Yes, me. Back in the day, caress me, say, it never dies. I will not let thee go. The dollhouse, being hollow, floated a long time after the house went down. Just skipping through here. Poet is supposed to know, but the music knows. Doing your dirty work means closing those eyes that want to stay open underground. The child wanting to be bigger than death drinks soup cupped in both hands. And so on. The last one is, if there's more, I can't hear it. So that was one way, and that isn't a repeated experience. So that sometimes I wake up, I mean, the sapphos wake me up, but it's not with that fierce intensity, although the darker they get, the fiercer they get. I've been being dragged by her or by somebody over North Africa, looking for where and how these pieces come together. North Africa, not the Americas, but places I can't name to the north of Thrace and all that, wherever that is, you know, it's weird landscapes. Anyway, so that's another kind of receiving, and I think I'll stop and see if you guys want to ask me anything, and I'll have some other stuff on play with. And what do you do in my case? It's really hard if somebody asks you to write a poem. You know, Timothy Leary asked me to write a poem when he was dying for him. And I was, you know, with him, and I wrote something, but yeah, I just saw it here years and years later. I tried to put myself in that head enough to make it clearer what I was writing then. What I wrote then, only he and I would have understood. So questions or thoughts, or anything from you, Stephen?
Yes.
What is it?
The conceit of this class, Poetics of Enlightenment, tries to valorize and also, in some sense, deconstruct or complexify the term enlightenment. You know, and so we've looked at Mahasiddha literature, we've looked in translation, we've looked at Naropa, Saraha. There's a commentarial tradition on these very tight, almost laconic, koan-like utterances where Tibetans have said, oh, there's outer, inner, and secret meanings. But I wonder, because you've played with many languages. I mean, you've danced with many languages, amongst them being Tibetan, but also the very strong wisdom traditions. You already mentioned Sappho. If you might say something about in what sense your hearing or being called to poetic utterance is in some sense a translation or a movement of something.
I don't know that it's a translation at all. Sometimes it needs to be translated for me, but I have no idea. Many things I write, I don't know what they are, but I don't feel that I'm translating for someone, or that I'm putting into words something that is other than word. There is something that's other than word that it all comes from, you know? But we've all talked about that endlessly, about, I mean, all of us writers, writers write, we write about it all the time. It's like, you know, all the time you're walking backward toward the source when you're writing, you're swimming against the tide. But I once, when you mentioned all that, there was, I don't remember how I received this, it just came in. Oh, it was a class I had. When I teach, and then I want to read something else. When I teach, I try to do the same exercises I've given everybody while they're doing them. And at one point I gave them that very thing, and take something that they'd written maybe a short piece about and decide whether it was the outer or the inner. I figured it wasn't more than that, and to fill in the other parts, outer, inner, secret, and most secret. And I didn't have any such piece, but I started writing outer, inner, secret, most secret. It's called cartography. And I realized, yeah, it was a map of how meditation has moved for me over time. Sort of, I guess that's what it is, cartography. Outer, bow. This part is easy. Keep all thoughts, even slightly questionable, to yourself. It is probably better to color within the lines. Cross at the sidewalk. Never stare into a stranger's eyes. On the map, assume north is where they say it is. Inner. Feel the dance. It never stops, nor do the winds. They flow from the inside out. Remember, there are two norths. Distinguish between them. Secret. You take whatever direction you take, not out of indifference or nonchalance. You love the maps. Though they lied, they got you here. Most secret. Perhaps you dreamed the maps. Perhaps you burned them. Anyway, they're not here. And north is everywhere. So, and really not really directly to the point at all, but when I was teaching in Chicago, I had so much time on my hands. I was an artist in residence for 4 months, 5 months, something like that. And I had all this endless time, so I was doing less when I didn't feel like writing, I would write playwriting, or either I'd be translating something I couldn't do very well, or I'd be fake translating where you make the word, make what it sounds like into what it is, as in Tchaikovsky's Vitalis, and or I would just make tantrums. I would open the books and grab a line here and a line there. And one of the things I was reading, you might recognize the lines and know which edition of the Mahasiddha's Vibes I was using in this one, but I don't remember. I have 2 or 3 at least. But I would randomly take a line, and then I'd take the next line, opening the book, and then pantoums fill their own form, so you only have to keep taking a couple of lines and weaving the old ones in and like that. This is Doha Pantoum. My Dakini, my lady, my queen, innate purity that is the nature of mind, all entities of experience, inner and outer, for with pure vision there are no distinctions. The innate clarity that is the nature of mind dispels the gloom of ignorance, for pure vision knows no distinction, and great happiness is like a horse, an elephant, or the ocean. I'm going to start this again, I think. I'll just keep going or start over.
Start over.
Zoha Pantoum. My Dakini, my lady, my queen, innate purity that is the nature of mind, all entities of experience, inner and outer, for with pure vision there are no distinctions. The innate clarity that is the nature of mind dispels the gloom of my ignorance, for pure vision knows no distinctions, and great happiness is like a horse, an elephant, or the ocean, dispelling the gloom of ignorance. The nature of mind is a wish-fulfilling gem. Great happiness is like a horse, an elephant, the ocean, and the thought-free yogin like a child. The nature of mind is a wish-fulfilling gem. At the propitious moment, the thought-free yogi, like a child or a relaxed sage, rejects nothing whatsoever. At that propitious moment, ultimate reality is just the vision of the perfect teacher, The realized sage rejects nothing whatsoever, and in supreme solitude contemplates all-embracing space. Ultimate reality is the vision of the Guru, who holds all entities of experience, inner and outer, in supreme solitude. Contemplate all-embracing space, the Zakini, the lady, the queen. I always in Pantoums change the exact wording from one time I used to without it. Otherwise it's too boring. You know, it's just a game completely. So that was just a little plaything I did there, and I thought I'd bring to that. Not to address too many questions. If you guys want to ask, yeah.
So first, you just mentioned Catullus, that's right?
Yeah, I mentioned him in relation to a huge fat book that's all been translated by poet Louis Zukowski.
Okay.
And he did that sound kind of translating, where instead of the meaning you take what the word brings to your mind, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody could say bell in French, and you could start writing about you could substitute tintinnabulation, you know, from the Poe's poem, the tintinnabulation of the bell. Anyway, that's how I mentioned Catullus. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
what was your question?
So then the question is, like Stephen just pointed out, we're looking at poetry of enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. So to understand better what that might possibly mean, if it means anything at all,
Mm-hmm.
how would you distinguish the love poems and the obnoxious poems and the erotic poems of Catullus with the Doas of the Mahasiddhas and these? What's
How to distinguish Catullus's poems from the Mahasiddha's poem?
Yeah, what's to draw out what we really are talking about if we talk about poetry?
Okay, I
of
don't think
enlightenment?
that, I can't speak for Catullus because I didn't really know what those guys were doing in late Rome. I think they were kind of like wasting their time mostly, but really, I mean, Ovid wasn't all the time, but
Petronius.
yeah, I think Ovid was the only one who wasn't totally wasting his time. In the Metamorphoses anyway, he got some alchemy in there by mistake or something, in the beginning anyway. Anyway, I really can't tell you anything about Catullus's practice besides, you know, to the extent that it's truly a love poem practice, which, how much is that? Very little, you know. I mean,
Well, so in this case, the question really is, what do the poems do to you differently, if they do anything different at all? We don't maybe need to know what Catullus was really up to in the day, but what does it do to you as opposed to?
Well, you know, it's very hard to off the page just read Latin. So if you, I mean, I've done it sometimes when I've been, interesting, when I've been away from it for a long time, and I'm only have the hang up of thinking about syntax, so I open the book and it just reads. But, so those times, it doesn't open the door that makes me travel to the time. It's not, Burroughs, I was just talking to Stephen and Shepard about, Burroughs talks about an author creates when he writes a book, or maybe in a single poem if it's not a novel. A novel is a time machine. And in the same way, I would like to be taken back to where he, you know, him going over to Lesbia's house and all that matter. Rarely does it happen. Some of his lines, some of his poems, I can get there where he is when he's talking to his brother who died. You know.
Yet you're making the point that the Mahasiddha, the Doas and these sorts of, this poetry transports you, takes you.
I'm making the point that writing poetry is enlightenment, is the same as working toward enlightenment. Or writing poetry and meditating are no different. That's why I'm talking so much about how I receive it, because that's being in a state very close to the state I'm in when I just try to open out from the inside, to just sit and be open to everything that's going on. But you know, I could probably name the poems that do that, or the ones that are most consistently written by other people. Catullus wouldn't be on that list.
Okay, good.
Yeah, neither would Homer.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there are passages in Homer I would have to say would be there, but few. Somebody in the back, yeah.
So since you're receiving these poems, what's the role of your mind in the process?
My mind goes away, takes a vacation.
Do they come back to revise?
No, not much. A little. most revising I do, the most revising is where and the same as with a bad meditation that somebody rang the doorbell, person from Portland. You know about the person from Portland. Anyway, that's anyway, but most revising I have to do is where I'm interrupted in my mind, either by my own inattention or by the doorbell ringing or all the books falling down three rooms away because I didn't pile them up right, and that kind of thing. But sometimes I'll revise because right now, having had both Sjogren's and Parkinson's for a long time, I don't always reach for a word and it's right there. It's the first time in my life. So that's a little bit annoying. But it's part of getting older too, as well as having a disease. And other than that, no, I don't. I stopped revising much when I was quite young because first I spent a few years revising desperately everything I wrote, trying to get the cleanest, most simple statement I could. After I did that, and you're going to do that for the rest of your life, you'll die of boredom. So I knew those things worked, and I wasn't interested in them anymore. And two things happened. One was Ginsburg, a Kerouac song came through and stayed at my house one night on the way to Tangier. And Jack pointed out to me that in places where a poem didn't work, the thing to do is go back to the first form. The first way you wrote it, drop that line in, let it be as awkward as it was. And where those awkwardnesses were, I later learned, he didn't point that out, but this next part, which is that where those awkwardnesses are is where the reader can enter the piece. The second thing was I took 10 classes in choreography from one of my mentors who was named James Waring, and he was part of the whole New York dance world. And I think it was about the fourth class. I almost brought those notes. I found the notes, all my notes from Jim's class. I think it was maybe the fourth class. We all came trotting in. We'd done these various kinds of chance operations in order to get our brains out of the way when we were making a piece, one kind or another. We would divide the alphabet into soft sibilant sounds or percussive sounds, and then we'd have index cards, and everybody would trade cards, and we'd do choral pieces and all that. This time we were all going ho, ready to do our next thing. Jimmy comes in and he stares at us for a few minutes, and then he just says, tonight we're going to talk about form. Everything has a form. Silence, silence, silence. After 10 or 15 minutes, we realized he wasn't going to say anything else. And slowly we got up one by one, and we're going down the stairs and leaving, and I'm looking. Yeah, it's true, that has a form, that has a form. And the reason that was so important was because we were being bullied at that moment by the new criticism, which was a way of writing that claimed that you had to polish everything so it was a perfect artifact. So you had to impose a form on it instead of allowing it to have a form it had. And all of the writing that happened that became beat or not beat, but still beat, like Philip Whalen or something, all those things were out of that kind of realization. Leave the process on the page. You know, that's the way, not only the way in, but it's what's interesting, it's what's news. The fact that you can polish a sonnet is nobody's news, you know. But the fact that you can open the process to all readers and invite them to their own process and their own creativity, that's worth doing. So those were two of the reasons, and it became clear that most of my revisings were trying to make me look better, or make me have the poem I thought I wanted to write in the first place, which maybe wasn't at all what the poem wanted to write. Somebody else, and more questions?
I've heard that, Ginsburg, when he wrote poems, he would often read them over and over again through different people's eyes. So he would get different viewpoints or different, have a whole audience of listeners. And I was just wondering if you ever use that technique or who you might...
No, it's automatic though. If you're doing a reading and the poem is new enough so you're not you haven't heard it's whole. Some of them come in as music, as I said, some don't. That you will hear, not maybe the whole audio, or not maybe reading to one. I don't read to one person. Sometimes the shepherd, but not otherwise. But it's sort of automatic that you will be hearing, you know, what people are hearing. You go, oh, that word I'm going to get rid of because it could mean this or that. And now people are lost at that place or something. There's a little of that always happens too, yeah. But Ginsey had a lot of different theories at different times about what he was, how he was doing it. But some of the things that he seems to have been, in a lot of ways, the great poet that he was. He seems to have been the kind of poet that could have easily done it in, I can't say prose, but maybe something closer to it, because he always likes that he wants you to end your line where you end your meaning. No enjambment, no, you know, puts in lots of commas and other things, and it's a different head for that. So, I don't know too much more about that. I mean, I know more about Jack's process because he talked about it in those few pieces, spontaneous pop prosody or whatever that was called, yeah.
Could you say something about the published version that tried to keep the way in which he wrote it? It got published as Some of the Dharma, which showed me at least that he had quite a considerable, for his time, knowledge of Mahayana Buddhism, largely through the French and Sambhogakaya and all these things that, you know, the Zenis didn't know about. I mean, didn't know about as literature. And, I mean, you knew Jack, and did you, oh, you didn't really know him? Did he ever talk to you, or you said, well, Jack wrote a lot about his influence?
No, I said we know more about Jack's process, not influences, but process, because he wrote some pieces that laid out his process very clearly. They're short, but they do it, and they're very helpful. I've used them in classes and things. But
you ever use Mexico City blues?
Oh yeah.
You see those as sort of dohas? It's a trick question.
I think that, no, to me, they're very Hinayana.
His.
Jack, the Mexico City blues. There's a lot of struggle in them, which I don't see in even, you know, I don't even see that in Mahayana, certainly not in Vajrayana, but you know, he's still in that place where they get into, I mean, he got to it a lot, but still in that place where getting to compassion was the goal, not using that as ground.
Yes.
So to me, they're more Hinayana.
The term back in the day, improvisation, was used a lot, and I think he used it a lot. Could you say something, or what comes to mind if you think of poem coming to me, improvisation, which is, I think in the day, heavily associated with jazz, as opposed to, you know, rendering what has already been composed?
Well, I'm not improvising. If I'm improvising, I know the theme, and when something comes to me, I don't know what the hell it is at all. You know, I thought about that recently, but maybe it was a night or two ago. I was at actually David Bromberg's concert, and I'm going, why can't we have a poetry quartet where everybody is riffing at the same time, and the audience could kick back and hear it all at once, the way you can hear several instruments at once. And it doesn't bother you that you're listening to both the saxophone do that and the bass do that. And you can hold it, but somehow there's something in our heads about words, they stick, so that if you were reading, you know, let's try. Why don't you read? Why don't you, somebody up there read, and I'll read, and we'll do it all at once. Any rhythms we want. Anybody else want to read something? Yeah, well, how many? 5, a quartet, or a quintet? That's about as many. So.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay.
So somebody,
butterfly garden. Powerful and elegant as any rocker in the height of our youth raises his left hand to study the book. Both hands shake. The light was never more really decayed apples or the dreams of Datura.
Some people who are listening, can you hear different voices at the same time and hold them?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's
But they should be facing us too, because for
Yeah,
the
we
back-
can-
Differently mic'd,
Yeah,
yeah.
differently mic'd and yeah, exactly.
I was hearing the rhythms,
Yeah, yeah.
and then occasionally a word or line from there, or there, or there.
What, was I uncomfortable?
No,
Uh-huh.
because I was riding the rhythm.
Uh-huh.
And it sounded slightly percussive,
Yeah, mine.
which was what we, yeah. So imagining a legato form would be slightly different, like we'd have to breathe more through.
Yeah.
And also what a quartet does, even if they know the piece, that we weren't necessarily doing, is deeply listening to each other, including the spaces, so that it would be clear when to come in. So even if there was a kind of enjambment, it would be clear, one could actually hear it.
Also, if we were to read it again, having had a little intro to it, we probably would, the magic of it would come out more.
You want to try it? How about 3 people this time?
Okay, different people.
No, she
No,
said
no,
people
it
who
should
have
be-
Oh,
the
the
same.
same?
The same,
It should be so that
people who have the
they're
familiarity.
familiar
that's
with what.
Everybody does it again.
Including what we imagine that we remember that we read?
Okay. It's just got 3 of you, and how about you all?
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
figure so.
1, 2,
You and you and you? Okay, that's what
But
you want to
you
go
guys
up here?
should turn around.
facing each
And
other.
we're listening to each other this time, is that what
Yeah,
we're doing?
yeah.
As you read, you're
Okay.
reading, but you're hearing each other. Yeah.
Okay, roll.
Yeah, let's just stand.
The
Okay,
3
we'll
of
stand
you.
behind you so that.
Okay.
And you all should be able to look at each other's faces.
You should be
Yeah,
able
the
to
3
hear
of you
like a
need to
jet.
look at each other,
Okay.
and we'll listen.
You want to
We'll
read
listen.
again?
No, we'll listen. We'll just listen.
Oh, just listen.
Yeah.
Are we
Don't
gonna read
be,
the title?
okay. Don't be guys, just go.
Indonesia is mine. In my Andalusia, the
My
hanging
Diane,
gardens
my
are
lady,
intact.
my queen,
The fountains
innate
flow,
purity that is the
the
nature of
arches,
mind, all
and
entities
minarets.
of experience,
probably
inner
not
and outer.
complete.
For with pure vision
Not
there are
entirely
no
out.
distinctions. The
Never
innate
Calls to
clarity that
prayer
is the nature of
brings
mind
out freedom.
dispels the gloom of ignorance. For pure
Yes,
vision
Jesus.
knows no distinctions, and great happiness is like a horse, an elephant,
Here
or the
we
ocean.
Somebody
have
should take a
Dispelling
solo
the gloom of ignorance.
to
The nature of mind is a wish fulfilling.
Somebody might want to take a solo.
Okay, solo,
We could have some
solo,
direction.
solo, solo,
You take whatever direction,
Solo.
take whatever direction you take,
solo.
not out of indifference or nonchalance. You love the maps. Though they lie, they got you there.
Here libraries of illuminated books, scrolls and maps from every corner of the earth draw the wise.
Perhaps you dreamed the maps.
Men
Perhaps
and
you
women
burned them.
who come
Anyway,
to ponder.
they're not there.
At that propitious moment, ultimate reality is just the vision of the perfect teacher. The realized sage rejects nothing whatsoever, and in supreme solitude contemplates all-embracing space.
And
Ultimate reality.
And nor does it really.
You might want to, if you did that, you might want to go back to an ensemble again, where all 3 of you are doing it together.
Yes, I think we got a group here.
Well, I love jazz.
So, yeah, Goyle.
Yeah.
It certainly reminded me of Glenn Gould's radio work. Not so much the intentionality of the performer, because he was working with recorded voices, but the idea of creating counterpoint through recorded voices, through a common subject matter. And it was much more, it was a very loose counterpoint, because it wasn't as strict as Bach was studied and affected, but it reminded me of that too. There's like aleatoric elements of it. For me, experiencing this is very much a same experience of experiencing Glenn Gould's work, is that all of a sudden the actual subject matter and the words fell away completely, and it was just the experience of the sound then, and the cadences, and the interplay. So it became very much one instrument then. So.
Yeah. I know it.
That was fun.
That was fun, yeah.
And now for something completely different, or not. Some people may or may not know, because you've published on this, that you've continue to have an intimate knowledge and something much more than interest. What is he going to say? What is he going to say? With some of the so-called Western esoteric or magical traditions. And the word alchemy is sometimes used. Shantideva, curiously, used it in his great work, Entrance into the Way of the Bodhisattva. And he said that to generate the altruistic wish that all beings might be enlightened catalyzes in the alembic of one's life an alchemical process, which is quite worthy. We know that alchemy, Rasayana, in some sense, was well known in India. And I remember once, in a very just en passant, you said to me, yeah, alchemy, but not as, I may be misremembering because I misremembered, not as Jung puts it, but literally, or real alchemy. And I wonder if you could say something about your involvement with forces, elemental, alchemical, in your understanding, lineage-wise or not, and your work as a poet.
Yeah, I suppose I can. Let's see. There were many years where actually, and truly, I would have loved to be able to work with the actual elements of alchemy, and do actual laboratory work. But living in the city and not having that kind of bucks to play with, I didn't ever do that. So I really can't talk about that and lay claim to having done anything, but study texts. And I had a class that I did. We had this school called Simha. Shepard and I were two of the four. We were 50% of the school, at least, and there were 4 teachers. And we tried to cover most Western esoteric traditions. I gave a course called The Structures of Magic, which tried to drop away all the purple prose of all the books, books that some of them are very sound, but they're still talking in that kind of, sometimes it's biblical, sometimes it's like they're about to write a romance novel, or horrible kind of prose stuff, and just get down to what is the nitty-gritty of these structures that weave together to make the basis or the foundation for magical workings of various sorts. And, it's not, I have to say it wouldn't be much use without also what you're calling an ethical or a moral. I never really got that about moral and ethics, but I suspect the word ethics, so I'll stick with moral. Morris is not that useful either, actually. What would be the real word? Yeah.
Responsibility.
Yeah, like compassion. Yeah, but we don't talk about that in the West. But I noticed.
You noticed.
But so there was this. I taught first. I investigated more, and then I taught the four lecture thing, which looked at the language of alchemy itself. Why was it coded? Why was it coded the way it was? How were the colors used? Almost not a single alchemy text from from back in the day that I ever saw that covered the whole process. And people usually think they've got I've got the whole thing right here. No, you've got going from green to white, or you just got the beginning up to the point where the black matter constellates for the first time, and there's a pattern in it, in the alembic. So first you get your bearings and know where you are if you're reading a text, and then, you know, some of the things I noticed about how to read it, and some of the ways is different words will be used to mean a whole, like the word fire can mean so many things. So many things, you know. There's a fire that is, or fire, oh, I'm going to make some tea now, that kind of fire. Of course I used to a lot. There's the fire of composting, like if you've had a compost pile and you know how hot it gets, there was all kinds of ways of use. And then there's, you know, the fire of the spirit. So there were a lot of words like that. I looked at that kind of thing. So this was a 4-lecture course that I gave them. I have, I've been thinking, well, no, but it's another book that needs out, but it's not. And then when folks had done that, and there were enough of them that took it, we started something called the Alchemy Study Group. We take I Xerox a rare text that nobody could get, we all took it away. We met a month later. One person would have constructed something out of the pages and sat and invited us to sit inside it, or somebody else would have done active imagination work with it and come
Do I
into
still owe you finding one of those rare texts that you were having trouble getting, and I couldn't find it?
Oh, the Ambix, you did
Oh, I
get
did?
it for me.
Okay.
You did, you don't owe me anything for that.
Well, that's not
You owe me
true.
some other things for that. But no, you don't owe me that. I'm glad I got that away. Ambix is a magazine that looks at the junction of alchemy and chemistry. And John Dean was doing anyway. It's something that Stephen had to get me, got me anyway. So there was those, and then there's all these rare texts, and we did our various things with them. And then, you know, then when that class ended after a long day or a long weekend, whatever, I'd have another text I'd give you all, and you'd go away and do what you wanted with it for another month. There was a biochemist that was coming for a while from some school up in Sacramento, so that was very useful when she showed up. But and I have all these stuff and all the notes, and if I can't say that I've ever been an alchemist in a real sense, because not this life anymore.
Didn't you write a preface to a
Yeah,
republished
I
work
did.
of Waite?
Yeah, the 2 volumes of the Hermetic and Alchemical Writings of Paracelsus, a great 2-volume thingy. You know, you have to make a stretch there because Waite wasn't translating from Paracelsus's German, which seems to be not German exactly, but God knows what. German, Swiss, and 6 other things, but he was writing from a Latin translation. He was translating, but it's a very, very terrific 2 volumes. There's it's an anthology of many texts, and some of the great ones are like the Hermetic astronomy. Hermetic astronomy is one. Paracelsus at one point is saying, but you know, all these good things, but at the end, you know, everything will burn in the fire of nature again. The whole universe will disappear. Of man, the heart will remain. Of the universe, the flower, the eidolon of the flower, E-I-G-O-L-O-N, of the flower. But of man, the heart will remain. You know? Another place, another one of those things. I mean, what I have is books of poems. I will carry around some of these quotes for years until they want to turn into, or want to show me another meaning, and then that poem happens. You know, one is, fire is the whole of our art. I'm still waiting on that one. I'm thinking that. I'm not thinking, but it comes and goes. Recently I quoted it, it's poor Shepherd. Wake up, Shepherd, I want to quote you something. It's 4 o'clock in the morning.
I'm ready.
Now, was that from Paracelsus, and you were thinking on that?
Fire is the whole of our art. I don't remember, I think it was, yeah. Imagination is the star in man. And you know, you read Rand recently, one part of that has that in it. I don't know, I don't usually talk about state secrets of grants, but, I mean, the grant is not, grant came out of me all in one piece. I had just read all of the Maximus poems twice, once with the commentary and once without, because I was about to write 3 lectures for, there was a series up at University, State University of New York at Buffalo. People were endowed, it was an endowed thing for 10 poets to each give 3 lectures on Olson. And it was going to be my turn. It was my turn. I was sitting up there. I'd read everything with all the annotations that Judge Butterick had done, and then I read it all through without them, and then through with it the second time, and I picked up a pencil and wrote rant. And I called poor Shepherd up and read it to him.
One of the more amazing phone calls I've ever received.
I said, I just finished this poem, I want you to hear it. So I'm going to read it, and then I thought I'd tell you a couple of the things, not all of them, that are just straight out quotes from somebody else that arrived while I was writing it, and I stuck them in. Okay, rant. You cannot write a single line without a cosmology, a cosmogony, laid out before all eyes. There's no part of yourself you can separate out, saying, this is memory, this is sensation, this is the work I care about, this is how I make a living. It is whole, it is whole. It always was whole. You do not make it so. There's nothing to integrate. You are a presence. The work stands from, I'm sorry, there's nothing to integrate. You are a presence. You are, you are an appendage of the work stems from, hangs from the heaven you create. Every man, every woman carries a firmament inside, and the stars in it are not the stars in the sky. Without imagination, there is no memory. Without imagination, there is no sensation. Without imagination, there is no will, desire. History is a living weapon in your hand, and you have imagined it. It is thus that you find out for yourself. History is a dream of what can be. It is the relationship between things in a continuum of imagination. What you find out for yourself is what you select out of an infinite sea of possibility. No one can inhabit your world, yet it is not lonely. The ground of imagination is fearlessness. Discourse is videotape of a movie, of a shadow play. But the puppets are in your hand, your counters, in a multidimensional chess which is divination and strategy. The war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. The ultimate famine is the starvation of the imagination. It is death, to be sure. But the undead seek to inhabit someone else's world. The ultimate claustrophobia is the syllogism. The ultimate claustrophobia is, it all adds up. Nothing adds up, and nothing stands in for anything else. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. There's no way out of the spiritual battle. There's no way you can avoid taking sides no matter what you do. There's no way out of the spiritual battle. There is no way you can avoid taking sides. There is no way you cannot have a poetics, no matter what you do. Plumber, baker, teacher, you do it in the consciousness of making or not making your world. You have a poetics. You step into the world like a suit of ready-made clothes, or you etch in light. Your firmament spills into the shape of your room, the shape of the poem, of your body, of your loves. A woman's life, a man's life, is an allegory. Dig it. There's no way out of the spiritual battle. The war is the war against the imagination. You can't sign up as a conscientious objector. The war of the worlds hangs here, right now, in the balance. It is a war for this world, to keep it a veil of soul-making. The taste in all our mouths is a taste of our power, and it is bitter as death. Bring yourself home to yourself and enter the garden. The guy at the gate with a flaming sword is yourself. The war is the war for the human imagination, and no one can fight it but you, and no one can fight it for you. The imagination is not only holy, it is precise. It is not only fierce, it is practical. Men die every day for the lack of it. It is vast and elegant. Intellectus means light of the mind. It is not discourse, it is not even language. The inner sun. The polis is constellated around the sun. The fire is central. So some of the things that are there, I wasn't thinking about them, but they came in as a memory, sensation, will, and desire are the middle of the tree of life. They're chesed and gebrek, and so they're like, there's a book called The Tree of Life that is in the Judaic, but also the Western magical tradition, and the central part of it is said to be like a personality. And the center of that is a sun, is a Tigeret, which is the planet that's corresponding to that is the sun, and memory is on one side, and will, which is the strength place, is on the other side. The Venus place is right under, so it's like that. And that's, so that's desire, and over here is, I don't know what word I use for it, but the whole, anyway, so there's that kind of thing in there. So these words that just came in, like a man's life is an allegory, is Keats, on his letters. History is what you find out for yourself is from Olson lecture. I mean, I wasn't thinking about any of these guys, but they just threw their lines in there. Anyway, yeah, so. Isn't this around the time are you guys missing your break at the time that you do them? What goes on?
There will be time enough.
There will be time enough.
What's really interesting is exactly 7:30, which is when we usually take our break.
I was thinking maybe this would be a good stopping place. But,
would you like to continue for a little bit longer? We had talked that, or is this enough?
I think what I want to do is get up and walk a little bit, walk around, and then see how I feel. I'll come back when everybody comes back, and we'll see if we want to stay or go. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.